Welcome back. So I was the only one in the shop yesterday, but it was a good, nice, peaceful day. Some music playing, and I got on with doing some of the wiring there for the antennas. So here I'm putting the B and C connectors on the end of the cables that run down through the keel there for COM1, COM2, and also the transponder. So once I had those connectors on both ends, you can see, you remember I had those bulkhead pass-throughs there for each of those. So here you can see I'm just basically hooking those up, and then all the cables actually have already been made a long time ago for inside the cabin. So the last remaining ones there were the one that goes to the GPS antenna that's in the nose hatch, and also the nav antenna that's one of those sort of composite ones that's been laid into one of the lower surface skins of the foreplane. So I did the cable for the GPS one as well, and I half did the cable for the one for the nav antenna. I've just put the end on one end, and because I'm not sure exactly how long that needs to be until we get ready to close out the foreplane. So anyway, it's good to get those antenna lines out of the way. And that means I can move on to other stuff. And actually pretty good now, just being able to do like projects that only take a few hours to do this, that, and the other, and you can immediately see progress instead of working on things that take a long time. So there you can see those are all in, and the one on the left side there was the one for the wireless hotspot. And if you look behind there, you can see I installed the GPS antenna. I'm trying to get the camera there, you can see it. So that's installed there, and so that just needs the cable to be created and hooked up to that. And through the magic of TV, there, it's all done. So that one's there, and it basically goes through that bulkhead pass through there. And that one actually has a different connector on it, a screw-on type, which I believe is better than a B&C. And over the weekend I went down to Joanne Fabrics and picked up 3 yards of this black suede. I guess it's sort of like Ultra Suede or Alcantara or whatever, but that's what they had there, and I think it's nice. It's not too furry, not like the other stuff that we had, that we did that dash with originally. So that's going to work out, and that's going to go on these roof panels there. So they just need to have a little bit more fitment done around where the rear seat belts and stuff are before we can take them down to the upholsterer. So having got those cables out of the way for the antennas, decided to switch up and move over to doing the linkage there for the Autopilot servo. And the first one that I needed to do was for the servo for the elevator. And so they Garmin ships it with a little kit for hooking everything up, and the linkage basically consists of a little aluminum rod. I believe it's probably, I don't know, maybe 7/16 of an inch diameter or something like that. But it's not drilled or tapped or anything yet, so I actually had to cut it to length. So I measured the length that I needed, and then because I don't have the lathe in the shop, just set up my machine again to align up with the end of the rod, and then just drill it out with I think I was using 5/32 bit, because we're putting 1032 tap in there for the rod ends that they ship with the little kit. So it's nice to have done this before already on the machine, because I knew how long it was going to take or whatever just to do this, and I knew that I could get this done without having to bear the freezing cold and head up to Brits and go and use the lathe. And it was pretty cold yesterday here. So once I had that drilled on both ends, then it was time to do the tap on there, and just with a little bit of tap magic, I guess is the name of it. And I just used my little aluminum guide there. Oh, that's in a little bit of an awkward place, that clamp. You can't see what's going on. Anyway, so I used my little aluminum guide there, so I tap it straight in, and didn't have any problems getting that one sorted out. Just do both sides, and then ready to put the rod ends in, and then I can put it back into the cabin and connect it up to the elevator. And that, there's a little bit of fitment issues that I had to deal with, with the linkage and the alignment and things like that. But that's kind of the whole story with this whole prototype, is that everything has like a little bit of tweaking that needs to happen, so nothing goes like super smooth. Anyway, so there's the right end that ships with the kit, and just with a little locking nut on there as well. And they just send you ones with 2 right hand threads, so if you need to adjust the length, you actually have to undo it from one end, and then unscrew it or screw it in, whatever, and then lock it again. The linkages and stuff that I did on the doors before, I used a left hand thread on one end and a right hand thread on the other, and that way you can just unlock the lock nuts and you can just twist it in one direction or another, and it'll lengthen or shorten. You don't have to disconnect the ends. Anyway, that's what it looks like there, hooked up to the servo, and then hooked up to the torque tube there for the elevator, and nicely aligned there. So that's another job done. And now that I'm looking at it, I still don't actually have the linkage going to the one out through the bulkhead yet, so that's another job that I have to do. I thought I did that one. Anyway, so then it was time to move on to mounting the servo there for the aileron control, and that's something that I hadn't done before. So I created that bracket there, which is just basically a bit of 1/8 inch, and I spent the afternoon, or a little bit of time in the afternoon, getting that one done and getting it sort of partially mounted. And I wanted to show you again, I remember I told you last time I was going to show you how I cleaned up at the back here, so you can't really see where I replaced the flex lines because they're in the other side of that. But anyway, that's all tidied up now there where the fuel comes through. So that's what went down on Monday. And now we're into Tuesday morning, and I was back in the shop, and so was Jeff and Devon. And here you can see I'm working on mounting that Autopilot servo for the aileron there to that new bracket that I had. Or actually, I'm just mounting the Autopilot itself, the servo to its own bracket, and then that bracket has been mounted up to the one that I created. So yeah, one of the things with this aileron servo is need to actually connect it to the center stick, and I didn't really think about sort of adding any weldment or anything like that onto the stick, so Jeff suggested we just put like a little sort of almost like an 8L clamp around the center stick, and then just drill a rivet through there to lock it into place so it can't slide up and down. So that was one of the other projects that I had to work on today as well, getting that sorted out. But my goal was to try and get this servo completely hooked up and finished by lunchtime, so I could get on to doing other things. One of the things, or you'll see a little bit later, I started working on doing the brake lines and stuff as well. There's all kinds of things there that need to happen under that dash before I can actually start putting all the avionics and wiring in, but I'm making my way through getting them all done, and as soon as that avionics goes in, things will go really fast because all that wiring is really much done, or pretty much done, and then we can actually have all the overhead switches and stuff sorted out, and which they're already there, just need to be installed there. I still got to run a cable there from through those conduits that I put up there and put the plugs and stuff on the end, but that'll be possibly actually this week. I might be able to get to do that. And you recall those new brackets I created for the elevator, so Devon went and sanded all those down and got them sort of nice and cleaned up, and now he's putting them through the Aladyne treatment, which basically protects the aluminum. And then after that it'll be just priming it with some etch primer, and then later on they'll just get sprayed whatever main color it is that the aircraft gets, but at least they'll be protected between now and then. And Jeff removed the little bits of glue points that were holding this door in place while the hinges set up, and he just did a little bit of clean-up work around there and just made sure it was all operating nicely, and that's super nice. He did just a really nice job of making that fit well. I mean, I designed it in the CAD so it would work, but that doesn't mean anything if you don't know what you're doing. So yeah, the action on that and the fitment is just beautiful. And next up, I'm installing the little bracket there, which is sort of like the end stop for the Autopilot servo there for the ailerons. So it has this little thing that stops the Autopilot thing from spinning all the way around. Really, you just don't want it to pull your controls into an over center situation where it crosses over and then you can't get them back. So in ours, our controls are set up anyway that you couldn't do that, just because they hit the stops well before you get anywhere there with the autopilot, before it takes it through its range. I think the autopilot spins through about 100 degrees altogether, so 50 degrees one way and 50 the other way. And here I'm getting ready to put the that connector rod on, the one that I created. So actually went to put it on and then realized that with the way everything's sitting that I need to actually get it horizontal first, because if you don't, then there's no way to move it around to where it needs to be, because it was a little bit too long. And as you'll see here, look, how do I get it around now? I can't move it, so I had to just lift everything up because it wasn't all bolted down yet. It was just sort of sitting on the studs. So that fixed that problem, and then I was able to move on to the next step, which you'll see shortly. While I was just finishing that, Devon and Jeff started walking in there with the foreplane to do a test fit, because we haven't test fitted it since it's been mainly assembled. It still obviously needs to be closed out, doesn't have the lower skin on yet, but this was as good a time as any to test it. And you can thank my mum suggested that we test that. She said to me when I was talking to her on the phone this weekend, she said, "When are you going to put the foreplane on? I want to see it." So I was like, yeah, I didn't even think of that. We were just busy trying to get it all finished, but it makes sense to actually fit it before you close it out in case there's any problems. And there's something dropping out of there. Something was loose in there. I think it was a rib from the elevator. So anyway, just basically dropped into place there and fit exactly like we planned it to fit. We didn't even have to trim the ends of the skins. They were already at the right thing from the templates that I had cut up for Jeff to do. So it just drops into place there and lines up with the forward bulkhead. And we still have to create some front hard points for the front spar in there to attach to. But basically that's how it sits. And actually I'm pretty happy with it. I thought it was going to look kind of bigger on there, but it looks just right. And you'll see a little bit later on what the view looks like from in the cabin. It doesn't really block your view much at all. So pretty happy that went on so nicely. So that can come off again once we just test fit the lower skins, and we also create the hard point for that front spar. But there you can see what it looks like there. I think looks nice and clean and doesn't look too big or too small or anything like that. It looks just about right. So it'll be interesting to see what it looks like when those new hangers are in. As you can see there, Jeff still needs to clear off around the door there to make it fit. Okay, so back to work here. There's the Aileron Autopilot linkage, and you can see I've sort of made a little bracket around there that goes around the center stick, and I've just put a rivet in there, just a nice steel rivet to hold that in place, and then the bolt going through there hooking up the linkage. And starting to put the bracketry for the dash back in. As you can see there, it is sort of hidden behind there now. But if I take it through the motions of that stick there, and this stick is hooked up to just the right side stick at this point. But yeah, just sort of rocking that back and forwards, you can see it takes it through the motions there, as you would expect. So hopefully that's all going to work out nicely. And these oil rings arrived from Barry today. These are the ones that I got done out of the oil impregnated bronze. And these are for the redrive that allow the pressure to stay up for the prop control. So I'll have to tear down the redrive when I get a chance and put those back in. And as you can see here, I've just put some 5-minute epoxy there to hold those little studs there for the bottom of that little plate bracket that I created, and we'll end up doing a layup over that. And then in the afternoon it was time to move on to doing some brake stuff. So here I am creating the first of many different brake lines that go in the cabin. And the reason why there's many is because we have a little parking brake valve, and we also have the anti-lock valve system, and then we have the bulkhead pass-throughs, and then the various different cylinders as well. So here you can see this first line there is going from the where I'm connecting it up there to the anti-lock system, and that's just sort of sitting there loosely. I haven't sort of bolted anything hard down yet. And I'm connecting it up there to the parking brake valve. So that's the first linkage there, and I had to cut it to the right length, and just using the banjo fittings that they supply with the whole kit. So I think there's like 10 lines I have to do altogether in the cabin, 5 for each side. They don't take long to do, but I realized that I didn't have enough of this Schedule 3 or the AN3 line, so I ordered some more of that, and that'll probably be arriving in the morning. Summit Racing is really good for getting stuff like that overnight where we are, because they ship out of McDonough, which is just south of Atlanta, and generally I can order something in the afternoon, and it'll be arriving pretty much first thing, or at least by lunchtime the next day. Same with Aircraft Spruce, so that's been super handy to be able to get things like that really quickly and not have to wait days, and because it just disrupts your whole project, and you can't always be having everything available. Often you forget, oh man, I needed to get that thing in order to get this project moving. And Devon's been moving on with now priming these brackets there, so he's got them all hung up on his little washing line there, and going through the process of getting those all primed up, and then we'll be able to press the bearings in them and start bolting them onto the foreplane. And Jeff has closed out this little opening there where the aileron trim tab is, and you can see he's just put a little bit of FR4. He had to cut that out to the right shape just to close it out, so you don't have like a little hole that's going into the rest of the elevator there, the rest of the aileron. And this is just to give you a view of how things look. I've got the rudder pedals in there, as you might have seen just now, so I can have all the brake cylinders available, so I can run the lines back and forth to everything while I'm creating those. So things are moving along with that respect. And just to show you what goes through the process, so I've just put an end on just a regular bit of line there, and what I do is I'm screwing that onto in this case a bulkhead fitting that goes through, and then that bulkhead fitting runs all the way back through to one of the brake lines. In this case it's the left hand side. So thread that back through, and then put the line where I think it needs to be, and then basically run it to where it's going to terminate, and then mark it off with a bit of tape of exactly where I need to make the cut, allowing for the length of the actual connector itself. And just put a wrap of tape around there and then disconnect it, and take it back out there and clamp it in the vise. And then I just use a cutting wheel and just basically cut it off. It just does a real quick job, and it makes it super nice and clean. You don't even have to adjust it or touch it. It doesn't squash the line or anything like that. It's a really good way of cutting it. And so once you've created a line like that, and obviously I put the end on there, there's that line there. It's that sort of 1 second from the middle there, and so I've cable tied it to its mate next to it, and they'll get a couple more cable ties when it's all finished there, to make sure the stuff's not moving around. But there, it's going through the bulkhead there, and that runs out to the main brake calipers. So I made quite a bit of progress on the brakes today, and once that new line comes tomorrow, I should be able to finish them off. And here's a view from what would be the co-pilot seat in the cabin, just so you can see how the foreplane looks from there. And as you can see, it's there, but it doesn't really block much of anything in terms of your view. So at the front, obviously it doesn't block anything. A little lower corner of the window a little bit. Anyway, so I'm pretty happy with that. And as you can see, this is just a little pan around the shop, just to show you the aircraft from many different views as I can think of, with not only the foreplane on there, but if you notice, Jeff's got the strake skin, upper strake skins sitting on there now. They're ready to be bonded on, and that's probably going to be tomorrow or Thursday. And he's also put the upper cowling sitting on there, and also the intake scoop on there, so you can really start to get a look of how the whole thing's going to be finished out. Obviously the doors aren't on right now, and we don't have those little strake extensions on the doors. You haven't seen those on yet. They've already been laid up, they're ready to go, but we don't have them on. Anyway, so what do you think? I think it looks great. I'm really happy with how that foreplane looks. And of course the elevator will be on there, but it doesn't stick out very far at all. That's the whole idea. It sort of tucks in nicely and extends out when you need to deploy it, like the 2H flap design that I sort of modeled it from. Anyway, so coming around here, the other side of the aircraft there, you get a bit of a perspective, and you can see the cowling there sitting on there, and also the intake scoop. And you can see the wings still need to have the lower surfaces closed out, and once we get the cowling finally fitted on there, upper and lower, we can take the wings off there and close out the lower skins. And here I'm going to climb up on the machine and one-handed without hopefully falling off of it, at the same time holding the camera. But this gives you a bit of a nice sort of overhead view of what it's going to look like. And again, I'm pretty happy with how it's turning out, and that foreplane doesn't look oversized at all. And in fact, I'm glad that we ended up making it bigger after we flew the model. It needed to be, to give a little bit more lift in the nose, and I think everything's working out kind of as planned, or as good as planned, so pretty happy with that. Anyway, that's our update for the first half of this week. Tune in again on Saturday and see what we get up to, and thanks again for watching.